إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد, the host, or the so-called chairman of the South Africa debate, starts his introduction of the event by stating that it's a conversation, okay, or a discussion in an academic setting, held by the Department of Philosophy and the Department of Religious Studies. All right. Now, rather than a public debate per se, and that's what he said. All right. The presupposed assumption here is that that declaration would make the Muslim side of the debate look more civilized, more scholarly, more intellectually mature, all right, as it were. It's as academic as it gets. That debate, or that discussion, or whatever, as intellectually advanced as can be. Isn't that what you people respect the most? Well, here it is. We have it. We're going with it all the way. Right? Now, while this attitude appears to be justifiable in some general sense, in this particular setting, it is not. It's not justifiable. Okay? Uh, uh, as we've explained in previous parts, this is definitely not the way of the Salaf, and the actual drive behind it is to cultivate people's hawa, in a way that serves the ambitions of the da'iyah and places him where he aspires to be placed in the community where he lives. Hijab, as we need not demonstrate anymore, wishes more than anything to become a figure of authority on philosophy of religion at Oxford University, and he's taking that track already. He makes no effort to hide that ambition, and it shows on every occasion. That's no incursion on his hidden motives, brothers and sisters, as he and his friends would be tempted to accuse us. That's just following the evidence that shows throughout his entire practice. Okay? He declares it openly that that's what he wants to become. And that's what he thinks he has already become. Now, one really has to wonder, did you guys honestly expect the atheist position not to include any insults or intolerable accusations against our Lord or against his prophets in any way, just because he chose to label that meeting or that event a conversation or discussion rather than a debate? A discussion in such a setting is by definition a practice that should not include any assertiveness or firmly embraced beliefs of the sort that would get anybody offended from anything the opponent could say with true relevance to the subject matter. Academics are supposed to be people with theoretical contentions or propositions who discuss and converse over those propositions for the purpose of letting those of them who don't see what's wrong with their theories or their assumptions or their propositions, to let them see their faults and revise them. Now, isn't that what academic engagements are generally about? When you publish an academic paper, you're supposed to be willing from the start to accept the very real possibility that you have figured it all wrong. That's why certain mannerisms are prohibited in academic writing in general, certain tones in writing, attitudes. Now, because it's not about preaching beliefs and refuting falsities that contradict them. Academic discussions, academic discourse, academic endeavors, academic discussions, academic publishing. It's never about that. It's about engaging in a friendly, accumulated effort, accumulated effort, shared by fundamentally skeptic researchers in search for the truth with respect to some theoretical issue that might be out of reach of a single mind if it were to study it on its own or to attempt to learn anything useful about it. The discipline on the subject matter thus becomes the accumulation of years of assumptions, suggestions, propositions, theoretical attempts at the truth, revisions, and most welcome refutations and falsifications, revisions and stuff, within a tentative path where no outcome is certain or final and no end is previously determined or asserted. Okay? In a manner that is final. There's no finality in an academic endeavor. That's what academic discussions and conversations are supposed to be about. Okay? Thus, in principle, you don't enter the academy with the intent of trying to preach a certain faith you already have on a given subject matter. You shouldn't. You're supposed to already embrace a true stance of theoretical skepticism on that regard. To always embrace it, no matter how far you think you have gone. That is a true uncertainty about whatever beliefs you've acquired thus far on that topic throughout your academic endeavor, your academic career as a researcher. You should always be willing to let go of any theory that you embrace, no matter how many years you've spent building it and teaching it even to your students. Okay? So you should exhibit an honest willingness to opt out of those beliefs and revert your thoughts on the matter 180 degrees as soon as the evidence presents itself to you. Right? Now, I don't suppose that Hijab and Hamza would disagree with what I've said thus far. I don't think they can. Now, obviously, fundamental or basic religious beliefs that people hold, from whichever doctrine they come, are by definition not of that kind, not of that sort. They're not of that sort. Neither you, Hijab, nor your opponent would be telling the truth if you claimed you were indeed engaging in that discussion with a stance of theoretical doubt or skepticism about your respective beliefs. Neither of the opponents on such a debate would ever be willing to shift sides. Okay? Supposedly, neither of them would be willing to let go of their entire belief systems under the influence of whatever argument their opponent puts forth. Alright? Exceptions, of course, are too rare to count for anything in such a generalization that I made. Now, if you're such that you're asking of all followers of the religion you associate yourself with to reduce their epistemic status with respect to the warrant of their beliefs to the point where they would be honest when they claim that they are indeed willing to revert or convert to the opponent's beliefs due to whatever it is that transpires in the debate, then you're asking them to denounce the very meaning of faith and the binding lifetime commitment, lifelong commitment that it entails. Right? That's not only blasphemous in Islam and is the very definition of extreme irja, as we've shown in more places than one. It's fundamentally sophist, okay, dishonest, deceiving, and unworthy of a person who respects the deity they claim to worship. And that's why we've maintained in previous parts that the entire setting is at fault methodologically, and that you guys contradict yourselves fundamentally when you start the debate with the spirit the host expresses and end up practically fighting the way you found that you had to eventually at many points, more points than one in that debate. That's not just why the very concept of public debates of this sort in a setting of such as this is manifestly wrong, methodologically wrong. It's why the entire notion of an academic discipline or an academy dedicated for philosophy of religion as such is supposed to be lamentable to every sane, self-respecting believer in any religion, not just to a Muslim scholar. Okay? That entire notion is supposed to be rejectable. Unacceptable. A bunch of supposed researchers discussing religion as a principle at all levels, studying proclaimed arguments for and against all concepts that religion as an abstract notion comes with, in a sustained discipline that teaches whatever they argue or discuss in dedicated literature, and supposedly builds upon it, something one part upon the other, in a literally bottomless pit of sophistry. In that case, okay. What are those people trying to establish anyway? At the end of the day, what's the end that academy is heading to? Okay, what is it? Why is this a sustained academic entity at all in existence? It is fundamentally necessary for Muslims to be able to criticize certain academic practices and disciplines or departments or anything in universities and all, at a foundational level in this manner that I'm giving an example of here. Because not every topic that has a dedicated academy for researching it is necessarily a useful, worthy, or even respectable scholarly practice that a Muslim is okay to engage with, to participate in. all followers of an established religions have scholars and a scholarly legacy associated with it. Everything single one of it has that. Okay, every single religion of this kind has that. So, who are those people, the philosophers of religion? And what is the purpose of their endeavor anyway? What are they doing? And what's a Muslim doing there with them? Preaching Islam? Trying to convert them all to it? What is it? What are you doing there? Or is he trying to convince himself, perhaps, and his fellow Muslims, that the religion is indeed the truth? That their religion is indeed the truth. Islam is indeed the truth. Trying to convince whom? Through what? And with what? Right. Who do you think you're fooling, hijab? That's an atheistic discipline. An atheistic discipline from the bottom up. The discipline that calls itself the philosophy of religion, or that studies the philosophy of religion, the department of philosophy of religion, or whatever. That's an atheistic discipline, a sophist atheistic discipline. It's not about whether or not they respect good arguments for a maker or arguments for certain Islamic tenets of belief. They found them worthy of consideration or whatever. It's about the nature of the inquiry itself that constitutes that discipline. Okay, that calls for something disciplinary to come up, to arise. Okay, due to it. The reason why it never reaches any answer and is not expected to, that's what this is about. That's what we're addressing here. The reason why such a discipline never reaches any answer and is not expected to. And the more that it accumulates stuff, the more that it accumulates discussions and debates and deliberations, and the farther away it gets from achieving anything at all. Way farther. That's a place where all kinds of objections against the foundations of your deen, al-Islam, are generated at a regular basis, and where every philosophical attempt at a response to them is treated as a mere theoretical suggestion or proposition that you are required to adopt academic skepticism or theoretical skepticism with respect to before you even proceed to publish it. Such a defense or such a response or whatever. It's philosophy, right? You could easily be wrong. So what is that discipline really about after all? It's about defeating the very principle of faith and leaving it an exceedingly irrational, unjustifiable position to take. Brothers and sisters, that's what it's about. All you have is a bunch of theoretical assumptions that are no better than the ones that your peers have amassed for themselves throughout their academic careers in the opposite side, or in the opposite side of the divide between your two schools of thought, or your two doctrines, or your two systems of beliefs, or your two isms, if there's going to be an ism for it, naturalism as opposed to theism, or whatever. That's what it is. That's it. That's the academy you so eagerly wish to associate yourself with, hijab, and the discipline you're so keen on participating in. فَمَا نَقُولُ إِلَّا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. By definition, a philosopher of religion is someone who has no faith, and who shouldn't even declare that they do. They're not supposed to. Faith? What are you talking about, faith? What are you doing here if you have faith? Philosophers have been dubbed the enemies of prophets by Muslim scholars precisely because of this. They are enemies of faith in its very principle. Okay? And that's why anybody who's ever read to some of modern day atheistic philosophers, atheistic preachers, atheistic authors like Richard Dawkins and people like of as such, would find that they lament the concept of faith in its very principle. They're not saying that some faith is acceptable while other faith is blind and thereby unfounded and thereby should not be advocated or accepted or taken lightly or in any such manner. No. They're attacking faith per se as a principle. The notion of having faith, the notion of trusting somebody, or trusting some argument, or trusting some claim to be true in a manner that allows for no refutation whatsoever, for no revision whatsoever, for no, not even the slightest chance of being wrong. That concept of faith in its principle is unacceptable to a philosopher, unacceptable to an atheist, unacceptable to the academy at large. Okay? considering, of course, the kinds of inquiries that they invest themselves with, which are theoretical inquiries that do not, by their very definition, include or involve such kind of a faith. Of course, they don't know it. They don't discuss it. They shouldn't be discussing it. So they shouldn't be venturing into areas where such a concept of belief or a meaning in belief is relevant. They shouldn't, by the very nature of their practice. Okay, the tenets of our religion are not theoretical issues. They're not supposed to be addressed in academy in this manner. You know what I mean? The general sentiment thus is as thus here. If indeed you're so certain in what you believe, whatever it may be, then what are you even doing here in this academy? We're researchers, seekers of the truth, busy doing philosophy on these topics because we have no certainty in anything we propose. We thrive on questioning everything. We're no longer doing what we do in search for answers. We have come to the point where we no longer have any hope in achieving any answers. And this is indeed how some of them would define philosophy today. You would come across that definition often if you read in the literature. It's the search itself that matters, not the finding. There's no illusion that we could ever come to find anything anywhere. In many of their inquiries, in many of their debates and discussions and so on, and yet they're still engaged with them, they're still practicing them, they're still posing new questions, modifying their questions, refuting supposed answers or responses, and so on and so forth, with no ending in sight, anywhere. Okay, it's the questioning that matters. The question that matters, not the answer. This is indeed how some of them define it, as I just told you. So, we're doing it for the questions themselves. So if you have the illusion that you've acquired such a certainty that established a final stance of the sort that constitutes what people of religion would call faith, would label as faith, and if you're truly willing to die on that faith, then what on earth are you doing here at all in the academy, engaging with us at any capacity? Go home, man. Go to your place of worship and be with the believers. Don't come to us. We don't want you among us. We're in no need for a preacher who seeks to convert us to their faith. We're not going to have any faith. We don't believe in faith. We know better than allow for such a state of certainty or finality amongst our ranks in the academy. That's what it's like. We've been doing this for far too long now to take lightly to such a position. We think you're fooled. We think if you believe that some of these questions can indeed acquire final answers that cannot be refuted or cannot be revised or cannot be questioned in any way, then you're a fool. By definition, you have taqleed, you have iman sufaha, you're not allowed to be here. Okay? You're not qualified to even talk to us at all. You see how the mentality of this setting is like, what the mentality of it is like? We're beyond that. We've outgrown the notion of faith. Okay, as thinkers, faith is ignorance in philosophy. Hijab, by its very definition, by its very principle, as I just expressed to you. You know this by now, don't you? You know it. You know that's what they think. It's the position of someone who no longer wishes to question their beliefs. A position where someone knows the answers at absolute certainty. And they also know that doing philosophy in the Greek sense, and or according to the Greek tradition that defines the tradition in the academy, will never lead anybody there or anywhere at the truth. Okay? Even the notion of truth itself is questionable in many schools of philosophy. So you see how deep the contradiction here is, brothers and sisters. You either have faith, final faith, unshakable faith, the kind that Islam requires you to, okay? And so you cannot be an academic philosopher of religion. You cannot be an academic philosopher of religion at any capacity. Or you don't have that, and then you're not a Muslim at all. You see? You cannot be both simultaneously. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. Alright? The deep methodological issue that unfolds in this debate, thus, brothers and sisters, And pretty much in most of hijab's public debates and deliberations, as we've shown repeatedly, is due to him insisting on presenting himself as a teacher of truth who's opponent of philosophical truth, not truth as revealed from by the Prophet. No, a teacher of philosophical truth, someone who knows better than you in philosophy, no matter who you are or how much you think you know. I'm better. I know better, and I know that I know better in philosophy. Okay, and philosophy is what makes me philosophy. My philosophical credentials are what make me as such. My abilities, my intellect is what makes me in this, what places me in this place. And you all are supposed to follow me and listen to me because I'm as the superior philosopher to you. Okay, so you just shut up and listen, and you will learn from me. Oh, he insists on presenting himself as such, when in fact the setting itself is that of a dialogue of equals in theoretical merit and academic credit in the very principle, and thereby in the chance of potentially having the truth on either side. Okay, you shouldn't be talking that way. That's obviously not the format or the setting to do public da'wah for a religion that requires absolute submission, ultimate commitment, and final, unquestionable, unshakable faith in its tenets, a faith you are willing to die on, to die for even if you had to. Now, it's not the place to show those people what exactly is wrong with their belief systems, with their conception of religion and faith, and with Western culture in general, as you should indeed be doing. You don't go to a whorehouse or a brothel to preach about the sin of extramarital sex, hijab. You don't do that. That's what the place is all about. It's what's the setting is all designed for. Okay? Rather, you go there to have a good time, like everybody who goes there would. And sadly, that's exactly what you do in those debates, in academia, as you so happily affiliate yourself with. You enjoy flexing your muscles as a philosopher, impressing the audience with your intellect and your readings of philosophy as you smash your opponents in every occasion, establishing yourself as a prominent thinker and a public debater, exploiting the very culture you're supposed to be attacking at a foundational level. You're supposed to be warning Muslims against, not getting them engaged with. Okay? Don't give people what they want when it's your job to give them what they need. Alright? Western Muslims, hijab, don't need to be impressed with the way you win this debate or that. Rather, they need to be shown that the very idea of treating an atheist as an intellectual equal in an academic setting as such is a crime against the truth that we have inherited and that we embrace, and against the kind of faith we're required to observe. We're all, as Muslims, required to observe. Western Muslims need to be taught that such public shows as this debate itself are deeply and profoundly damaging to their faith and to their commitment to it, regardless of who wins and who loses in this particular occasion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not send his messengers to entertain people with their wits and with their smarts, or to impress them with their intellectual powers and their philosophical readings. No. He sent them to guide people out of what fallacy what falsity they believe, what shirk they've been living on, to the complete truth of Tawheed, in a way that leaves no space for the falsity in their hearts at all, no inclination to it. Okay? None whatsoever. He sent them to snatch people from their bad heartly inclinations and ahwa, if indeed they were to be salvaged at all, to be saved at all, not build their following upon that hawa itself that they have, whichever way it happens to be like. Don't offer your case as a theoretical proposition that just happened to enjoy better arguments than the opposing proposition on that occasion, as such a setting really implies, just because that's what those people expect to hear, that audience expects to hear, and it's what they feel like they need to hear. They feel wrong. They feel wrong. Show them why that feeling is wrong. Show them how far the culture itself has misled them. Don't engage, desensitize them, I dare say. Don't engage in such a pathetic show just because they wish to see a smart Muslim entertainer carry the banner of their group in such a public circus the way Christian stars like William Lane Craig or John Lennox and the likes do in the name of Christianity. You're a Muslim. You know better, much better. Okay? An atheist professor of philosophy is no equal to a Muslim intellectually, no matter how many books he may have published or how much prominence and repute he enjoys in the academy that gave him that rank. Okay, he's not even close to being equal to a Muslim commoner, a lay person, a Muslim who can barely even read at all. Not just a Muslim who's educated in philosophy. Any Muslim at all is better than the highest rank that a philosopher can reach in that discipline that you're so happily affiliating yourself with, the philosophy of religion. You need to show those people why this is the case. An academic debate between peers in a department of philosophy is no place to do that, obviously. It's a place to present the Muslim as a better philosopher, as a better intellectual thinker, one who needs to do the same homework that the smart philosopher do to end up where he is. Alright? To beat that opponent like he did. Now, I'm not saying that we Muslims don't need to learn the philosophies of those people to refute them powerfully and effectively. Of course we do, and we do that. Okay? Wallah alhamd, and everybody knows that. I'm saying we should not wear the hat of a philosopher in doing that, because that's what led them to that place to begin with. That's what led them astray in that setting, in that zeitgeist, in that culture that you belong to now, the Western culture. If you understand this objection properly, then you will understand why we say we Muslims do not endorse doing philosophy in its very principle, or presenting oneself as a philosopher at any capacity, academic or otherwise. That's not at all the same thing as saying we don't allow refuting false philosophical claims or providing rational arguments for the truth. Of course not, and please pay attention to this. A philosopher is not someone who sees the falsity in other people's beliefs and excels at showing it for what it is, a falsity or a fallacy, presenting an irrefutable case for the truth. A philosopher, according to the Western tradition that we're lamenting and we're attacking here, is someone who engages academically, systematically, or scholastically, if you will, in a sophist practice of debate and argumentation about the foundational or the fundamental questions of existence, and is thus compelled to respect his opponents in every debate as theorists with potentially equal claim to the truth, with theories that might indeed turn out to be correct, to be true, okay, to be worthy of accepting. Once you've conceded as a Muslim preacher to presenting yourself as a theorist who seeks to build a metaphysical case for your belief in the existence of a maker, like you, Hijab, did with your book, The Burhan, following that tradition, then you've ultimately defeated your da'wah before you even offer whatever arguments you've come up with. Okay? That's precisely why you look like an idiot every time you shout and spatter in the face of an opponent, Hijab, when in fact you feel like you're doing the right thing. You chose to place yourself in a template, and you're in a caste where you and your opponent must exhibit humility and skepticism, considering the nature of the premises you're offering for your case, the nature of the academy you both share affiliation with, and the legacy of literature it has on those issues. The background of the work that this academy has been accumulating throughout the years, ever since it was conceived. That's no position that the philosopher should be taking to their opponents from, that should be talking to their opponents from the position of a teacher or a tutor or a guide, okay, or a da'iyah, preaching something that he knows that those people don't have and that he has, and it is the truth and it's what saves them, and so on and so forth. That's definitely not the position that a philosopher should take, no matter how intellectually endowed they think they are. It's thus not the context or the place for a Muslim preacher to do da'wah the way the Messenger of Allah did. That context is not the place for that attitude. You understand me? The host, or the chairman or the chair or whatever, declares, "We find ourselves in an academic setting," he says so happily. And the purpose of this singular space, the academy, is to foster good faith conversations, often difficult ones, about life's deepest and most important questions. This is where we can engage in free and open dialogue in the spirit of seeking truth. In the spirit of seeking truth. Now, this characterization right here, brothers and sisters, this statement is exactly where the entire event goes wrong. Okay, at a foundational level. When you start as a Muslim by conceding that the questions addressed by the debate or the discussion or the conversation or whatever are indeed deep and difficult questions, as important as they are to everybody and foundational to their lives, and that both sides of the debate are indeed in the spirit of seeking the truth, as you described them, then it's perfectly alright that people should come out of it at the end of the day in more doubts and skepticism than they may have had coming in, than they have come in with in the first place. Okay? It's perfectly alright that they should even spend the rest of their lives in that doubt and die as self-proclaimed agnostics who have in fact been seeking the truth for as long as they lived in places such as this. This implies that whoever claims that they simply find no force in whatever argument you come up with for your beliefs should be excused and should be seen as potentially telling the truth about themselves, no matter what you have to offer them or how long you have been debating them or trying to convince them or whatever. They were indeed truth seekers who just were not lucky enough to find the arguments of that truth, as compelling as others may have, as others did. So as Muslims, we should engage in perpetual debates with all disbelievers in that very same spirit that this brother is describing fondly here, and only when they decide that they have finally gotten convinced with our case, should we decide that the Hujjah, Al-Hujjah Risaliyah, قد قامت, has been established for them. But obviously, that's not even remotely close to how the practice of da'wah and spreading the deen worked on the hands of the Messenger and his followers. Right? Anybody who knows Islam knows that. This would imply that there is no establishing hujjah on someone who insists on rejecting Islam and claiming that they just don't see it to be the truth. I'm not convinced. Say whatever you want to say, I'm not convinced. Will you attack me for thinking this way? Will you lament me? Will you disdain me for holding that for claiming that I don't see the truth in whatever you have to say? And I've listened to everything that you have. And I'm not convinced. Am I to be considered on the wrong for taking that position? According to that tradition, nobody should do that. Nobody's allowed to do that. Nobody's allowed to accuse anyone of anything in that setting. Okay? This would imply that there is no establishing hujjah at all on someone who insists that they don't see Islam to be the truth. And thereby there should be no punishment in the afterlife at all. No punishment. No, especially such a horrendous punishment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to people who would listen to the truth and yet insist that they don't want to accept it. They don't accept it. They reject it. Either you were lucky enough to hear the arguments and accept them, and thus you learned the truth, and thereby you won a prize in the afterlife, perhaps, or you didn't think there were good reasons for you to listen to that messenger or to accept his da'wah, and thus you shouldn't be punished at all. There shouldn't be any hellfire in the afterlife. You know, it's where your truth-seeking mind led you to. So why should you be punished, right? Nobody should blame Bertrand Russell then for the answer he said he would offer on the day of judgment when his maker asks him why he didn't believe in him. He could in fact be telling the truth when he says about himself that he thinks there wasn't enough evidence. That there just wasn't enough evidence. I wasn't convinced that you existed. Why should you punish me? Right? The question is too deep. The theoretical discussion is too difficult. There's too much literature under it. And that's how far my truth-seeking mind has taken me. I did my best, and that's where I ended up. Why should anybody blame me then? That's exactly why we find in a sect of Mu'tazila, extreme Mu'tazila, someone like Al-Jahid holds that an atheist who dies insisting on atheism, even after hearing everything that the Muslim has to offer, everything that Islam has to teach, could be potentially excused in the afterlife or could potentially be excused in the afterlife for failing to see it as the truth like others did. They might be honest. Okay, this stance is one of the reasons scholars of Islam did takfir of him, kaffaru al-Jahid wa shaykhu Thumam ibn Ashras, because it contradicts the Quran and what is known of Islam by necessity. It contradicts the Quran. You see where this position takes you guys, where this all ends up. You see what it entails. A sustained, ongoing academic debate that has been going for ages, where the questions are treated as too deep for commoners to answer them on their own, where they need to follow some smart, well-endowed, well-educated philosopher who manages to convince his opponents in a spirit of truth-seeking, as this guy here describes, that what he has is indeed the truth. That is the cultural opposite, the exact cultural opposite to what you yourself admit, hijab, that a da'iyah should do in keeping with the way of the Quran and the ways of the messengers in addressing those who are too arrogant to accept the truth. There is no judging anybody as arrogant or as self-deceiving in that context at all. There is no judging that the truth has been shown to those who are willing to accept it, and thus that your opponent is lying to himself and to others when he still insists or he claims that he still cannot see it as the truth, no matter how long you've debated him. It's a culture of infinite regressive argumentation and profound sophistry. That's what it is. There's no establishing any hujjah, any final belief in that context at all. Nothing is ever final there. As long as you're following the academy, you're committed to the way that it goes, the way that it runs, to the way that the debates are practiced there. You're always willing, and you should always be willing to accept new reasons to doubt everything you think you know in this regard, and to rethink them all over all the time. You will never be such that you've learned all the philosophical reasons your opponent may have as published in academic literature to reject your beliefs, obviously, no matter how much of it you may have read, right? So how would you dare claim that you know, and that now that you're at a point where you know what you have to be what you have in your belief system to be irrefutable or undefeatable, or your arguments to be unbreakable or undefeatable or something like that, irrefutable? You don't, and you shouldn't dare claim that. That's the point. They are, after all, profoundly deep and difficult questions that philosophers of great caliber have been debating and discussing in the spirit of truth-seeking for thousands of years too. All right? We're not talking about hundreds of years. It's thousands of years, ever since the times of the Greeks. There are leading truth-seeking giants on either sides of the divide, although mostly on the atheistic side, one must add. So who are you to think that what you have now, whatever it is, should end that monumental, perpetual debate, that age-old debate? You have to become a good, prolific philosopher who excels in such debates if you yourself, my fellow Muslim, wish to see the picture the way it needs to be seen, it's supposed to be seen, or at least come close to seeing it academically. And even when you do, if you do, you need to be profoundly skeptic about whatever you end up having or accumulating for yourself, because no matter how smart you think you are, brother, smarter people have reached different conclusions throughout the ages. Just look at the literature. It testifies for everything. If all those giants throughout the long history of the academy were indeed truth seekers too, then who are you to think that what you know is indeed the truth, or is better than anything that they had? You see what I'm getting at here, brothers and sisters? That's the spirit that this man is so happy to ask of you to engage with, to dive deep into. He goes on to say, not imposing our views on others, and certainly not censoring the views of those with whom we disagree. Certainly not censoring the views of those with whom we disagree. We also find ourselves in Africa, a continent with rich philosophies around the importance of fostering communal dialogue around matters of great importance. And the matter of religious belief is of great importance, is it not? Indeed, we can consider religion to be that quintessentially human activity of engaging with matters of ultimate importance, but it will not escape the attention of anyone in this room that the approaches and answers to these questions widely vary, widely differ. And while we have such wild divergences, conflict can result, and has resulted time and time again throughout human history. Today, we take one small step towards perhaps breaking this cycle, but let us not be naive. It won't be easy to break this cycle. Religious questions arise from the very core of what it means to be human. You may vehemently disagree with one or more of all of the speakers today, even the chair, pointing at himself, but I hope that you can find the courage to accept the free and open conversation about truth, to accept, listen to this, to accept that free and open conversation about truth must be fostered if humanity has any chance of moving toward a new, more tolerant and tolerable future. See, he's declaring the purpose here. He's declaring the purpose of this event. It's not guiding people to the truth. Obviously, it's not guiding people to the... It doesn't matter what you think the truth is, apparently. To him, at least. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you become tolerable. That you help build the future where everything is tolerable. No matter what people believe, it's okay. We're fine. It's all fine. Everything is fine. We're happy. We're beyond the point where we have to conflict, to attack each other, or to feel bad about each other because of what we believe. No. We're beyond that now. We want to achieve a place where we're beyond that. See what this is? This is what he's fostering. This is what he's trying to get people into. That's the host or the chairman opening, the statement of the host or the chairman or whatever. That's his statement, and it ends at that. Then he proceeds to introduce the speakers and stuff. Now, I assumed him to be Muslim, given the light-trimmed beard that he has. And perhaps his accent too may have given him away for me. He might be a Muslim. I'm not sure about that. But whatever the case may be, brothers and sisters, no Muslim with basic elementary knowledge of Sharia, of his deen, should agree with much of what he said in that statement. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. It's disastrous. It's a disastrous statement in more ways than one. I'm not sure. I don't know how Hijab agreed to it, or Hamza, or any Muslim for that matter in the audience. In whose religion is it taught that we should seek through conversation or through any other means, for that matter, to terminate the conflicts that happen time and time again throughout human history in the name of religion? من الذي قال هذا? That's definitely not what Islam teaches or points its followers towards achieving. Not at all. Religious conflict, even war in the name of faith, is a fundamental part of human nature that will never be removed from the human experience in this world. It will always be there. On the contrary, our religion teaches us in pretty much all inherited religious traditions, actually not just our religion, all inherited religious traditions teach that great conflicts, religious conflicts, are coming in the future, before the end of times. Conflicts of biblical proportions between people of religion. Have you never heard about the prophecies of the end of days in Islam, or in Judaism, or in Christianity for that matter? Never heard of Armageddon? Of the Dajjal, al-Masih al-Dajjal, of the final war against Jews, where a tree would call unto Muslim warriors, declaring that the Jew is hiding behind it, so calling unto them to come and kill them? Have you never heard of that? That value you're presenting here is a fundamentally atheistic value at its very core. Atheistic. Okay? A humanist value, a human-centered value. Only according to secular humanism is it to be achieved that humans create a society where no religious conflicts of any sort could possibly arise for any reason. A society where everybody is okay with whatever anybody else believes, or whatever they preach or call for in what they might consider religion. A society where nobody would hate somebody else for religious reasons, nobody would feel offended by somebody else's discredit or mockery of their most sacred things in their faith. Effectively a society where nobody takes religion seriously or holds anything as truly sacred, or really believes that if this or that were to happen, then the people who are dearest to them might indeed end up meeting with a fate of eternal torment in the afterlife. Nobody in that forsaken society should tell anybody else what they should or should not do, what they should or should not say, or what they should or should not believe. لا أمر بمعروف ولا نهي عن منكر ولا ولاء ولا براء ولا شيء من هذا. Now, what kind of a society, I ask you, Hijab and Hamza, would that be? What? A fundamentally secular, atheistic, humanist society by all means. Okay? The very kind of society that you claim to be at war with. A society where religion is no longer an article of existential importance to anyone at all, no matter how much they claim it. And to those it matters, it becomes nothing like the religions we all inherited, be it Islam, Judaism, Christianity, or even Hinduism and the likes. It becomes a mutated, trimmed form, tailored version of those religions where anything goes, where everything is okay, basically. Whatever people agree to be good for them, well, to make them happy as a human lot should be approved by the religion, by all of these religions that may be there at the time. Is that what you believe we should seek to achieve, guys? And if indeed that's the kind of society the Philosophical Academy aims, the Philosophical Academy aims at achieving, which, if you consider what I just explained in the previous part of the lecture and in earlier lectures, is necessarily the case, what then should be the proper stance of a Muslim towards that academy? What would proper Muslim scholars have to say about it, or about those Muslims who insist on affiliating themselves with it in every way they can on every occasion, and would take pride in doing so, like you, Hijab, do? Is that your mission as a da'iyah? Is that what this whole show is about? Is this what you can call, what you would call an Allah-centric value or end, Brother Hamza, as you stated in your podcast or your broadcast with Daniel Haqiqa and Hijab, when the one that we commented on earlier? Allah musta'an. Look at how eager that speaker, that poor speaker, is. How he is eager, how keen he is on conforming to that humanist, secular, wet dream. He says, not imposing our views on others, and certainly not censoring the views of those with whom we disagree. Certainly not censoring the views. In whose religion is this commitment to be accepted and observed by a decision maker in charge of the followers of that religion? Definitely not the religion of the people who were ruled by the likes of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. The speaker is not stating what any Muslim can do in the Western society, given, of course, the secularity of those nations and of the laws that rule them. The only way that the audience should understand this statement is that if indeed one day, the debaters on either sides of that debate were to take political power of any form, then they would certainly be committed to not censoring anything they disagree with. That's what we should understand him to be saying, right? The sad truth, brothers and sisters, is that he didn't even have to say that in the context of presenting or introducing the debate. I mean, if indeed he is a Muslim, that is, okay? Nobody asked you about the stance you would one day take towards those who disagree with you as a politician or a decision maker if one day you became one. Those who disagree with you on religious issues, okay? So why bring it up at all? Why? Why do you feel compelled to say that in this context? Well, because of what he loosely dubbed the spirit of truth-seeking in the academic context, brothers and sisters. That's why. Both sides of the debate are, by default, truth-seekers, as he describes them, who are only expressing what their honest search for the truth has led them to. So why should anybody ban or censor whatever they have to say? If indeed it is a fundamentally deep and devastatingly hard inquiry that has troubled the greatest minds in the Academy since its inception, an inquiry where every view would be on a par with the other in terms of being potentially true, then why should anybody censor whatever view they disagree with? Why? There should be no need for that. That would be totally unjustifiable, of course. The spirit of the Academy would forbid it. So he has to exhibit total commitment to that spirit at a religious or at least quasi-religious capacity, as he did, as the good student of academic philosophy that he is. We're here not because one side of the debate is seeking to preach the truth to the other side or to save them from the sad state of belief they are in, the sad state of affair they are in. God forbid. No, we're rather here because we wish to come one step closer to the humanist utopia that the Academy advocates, the tolerable future, or you know what I mean? That's why we're here. That's what he's telling us. And we should make it as clear as possible that this is why we are here. Okay, we are here to foster this tolerance. If everybody accepted the fact that their position is merely one view, just one view, one point of view, one opinion, in countless other opinions that are to be treated equally in terms of epistemic warrant, of course, and credibility in the academic setting that the debate is held within, then no religious conflict of the kind we all hate should ever rise, right? We would be more tolerant to each other. It takes a lot of work, of course, but let's believe that we are at least moving but one little step closer to that end with this debate. We're on the right track. That's what he says. He says, and while we have such wild divergences, conflict can result and has resulted time and time again throughout human history. Today, we take one small step towards perhaps breaking this cycle. Breaking this cycle? He says, but let us not be naive, it won't be easy. So not only does he believe we try to make people philosophically tolerant about all matters, we should try to make, and not only he believes we should try to make people philosophically tolerant about all matters that have to do with religion, regardless of how much we differ. He believes that an ending where a society that has no bloody religious conflicts at all can indeed be achieved at a global scale, and that it's not going to be easy to achieve it, but we should work for it. On what grounds, I find myself compelled to ask, do you build that belief, Mr. Chairman? The weird and funny thing, brothers and sisters, is that those guys, that sect of du'ah, with their hizbi mentality, they are keen on getting people out of secularism and into a mindset where they could accept a khilafah, a single nation of Islam where everybody is committed to a Muslim ruler that rules them by Islamic Sharia. That's what they claim to be trying to achieve wherever they are. Okay, that's what they claim to be committed to. But listen to what they say when they sit in such occasions and in such debates. They declare the exact opposite. They declare a commitment to the secular mindset, to the humanist values that prevail in these academies. That's a fundamental contradiction, and it teaches and it shows you that there's something fundamentally wrong with those people, with what they teach, with the way they think, with the way they practice da'wah. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Yani, if indeed this is the case, if you believe that that this future should be achieved, and that this future could in fact be achieved, and we should be working towards achieving it, by whose prophecy are you working, Mr. Chairman? By whose prophecy? Huh? Some prophecy in a prophetic religion we are not yet aware of, some religion other than Islam that we are yet to see on your hands, that you are to teach us or create or invent, or what is that? Not only do you have to be a humanist atheist to believe this, to believe that this is possible and that we should be working for it, you have to follow somebody's prophecy about the tolerant future, or tolerable future as you call it, as you're aspiring for here. So whose prophecy is it then, I have to ask? Your own? Subhanallah al-Azim. Subhanallah al-Azim. You see why, brothers and sisters, it would be profoundly contradictory and uncharacteristic of the setting and the context, and at deep odds with the purpose that the chairman himself declares here, that someone like Hijab would exhibit a harsh, assertive attitude and choke it up to the ways of the Quran at any point of such a debate. I truly wish you quit fooling yourselves and your followers, guys. It's unbecoming of a Muslim, let alone a Muslim preacher. Wallahu musta'an wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-ali al-azim.